for this invitation to speak with you tonight. It's indeed a privilege to be here in what we know is a much loved and revered place for all the families whose story we will share with you tonight. We extend a warm welcome to all of you for coming out, as Mary said this evening, and also to the people who have travelled from Westmeath to be with us, and from other places. We know people are here tonight, and a special mention to Seamus O'Brien from the Westmeath Historical and Archaeological Society, as Mary said earlier, who originally invited us to make this presentation in Mullingar last February, and we were really grateful to the people from Mayo who came up that time as well. Now, I know there may be people here from other areas who have their own stories of migration, so we extend a warm welcome to you all. I suppose before we begin tonight, we'd like to acknowledge the contribution of Sarah McNicholas from Bohola, who contributed to this work here. Sarah sadly passed away earlier this year, but her son PJ is with us tonight, and he will speak to you later on the story that she contributed to this chapter and this book. So our presentation tonight is called From Cregganbaun, County Mayo to Kiltoon, County Westmeath. And I suppose the presentation will focus on a land commission group migration scheme, which of 9 families from Cregganbaun area, County Mayo, and 1 family, the McNicholas family from Bohola in County Mayo, to Kiltoon in Castlepollard, County Westmeath in 1955, which next year will be 70 years since they left. This story tonight is a story of, it's a lived story of migration. John, who's going to speak to you and do the majority of the presentation, he was almost 3 years of age when his family moved to Kiltoon. So it's no wonder that deep in his soul there has always been this yearning to tell the story and explore the strong and deep and lasting roots and bond between Mayo and Westmeath. There's a famous geographer, Eston Evans, who once said, "Where people have lived, there's a story to be told." And tonight we attempt to tell you the story of these 10. I was just saying to Mary earlier, what a wonderful day to come to Killeen. Blessed. And I was just saying to Walter that earlier that the people who left are definitely looking down on us today and tonight here in this gorgeous, beautiful place. We're looking for information. The Irish Press, the Mayo News, and the Midland Herald all recorded the story. And in particular, you'll see quotations from Mayo News. But this is from the Irish Press back in 1955 in describing the move. And they said, from out of the west they came, from the mountains and the rocks and the bogs, on a new and exciting adventure. They came to a strange land with green rolling fields, with still woods and silent lakes in the heart of the Midlands. And yesterday, those stout-hearted men and women from the rugged lands of West Mayo were gazing with reawakened hope and purpose on the virgin and rich fields by the waters of Loch Derrivar. They left in March, and March was particularly important because March was the start of the season, and it was a time to plant and a time to grow. So that month actually is really important. 5 families left on the 23rd of March 1955. 4 left on Friday, 25th, 2 days later. And they came from Shrawi, Woodfield, Althorpe, Derriock, Cregganbaun, Baldock, and from Bohola, the McNicholas family from Bohola. I'm just going, I said to you earlier about Rathcarn, I'm just going to say just 1 or 2 things about that. Michael Davitt, when he was writing a book, commemorative lectures about Rathcarn, and he said, "Is there Marshen ko Nyabgana Nyabkotinta Avishidul Sir, nor the Ignadini Sheer Nurea Norder?" And he said, "It is unusual and uncommon to go east, and by our very nature we went west." And then he went on to say, "What wonder then that there were those that said, they'll not survive a week in the east, not having any of their own." And again, what he was meaning there was if you emigrated maybe to family that you had in the States or England or wherever. But when these families went up, there was nobody up there that they actually knew or aware of them.
Preparations were coming up some years or beforehand. 10 men went up to Westmeath to look at the land and see if they were interested in coming up to the land. And 9 out of the 10 decided to come up. Now, the one man that refused to come up said he wouldn't bother coming up. He said, if there were mountains, he would have come. He had sheep, and this Westmeath land would be no good to them. So that was So I think that Mike Corrigan was very involved earlier on with the work and the detail of coming up on that. And I think Tommy Neal came up and Paddy Hunt came up and John O'Grady came up, and they looked at the land and that and they decided that they would come up on that. I would say if we hadn't come to Castlepollard, my father had 3 brothers in Chicago, my mother had a brother and sister in Coventry. So I think Paddy Burke and Maggie Burke would have ended up in Coventry or Chicago rather than in Castlepollard. So it was a great opportunity for them to come up. They had 40 acres of good land, and moving on, then we see the thoughts there. But this was something that we should take on board with that. And the next photograph then it talks about the leaving and that. And that's the children of Cregganbaun National School. And if you look at that photograph, some of the names that are there are Needhams and Corrigans and O'Grady's and Kilcoynes and that moved up to Westmeath and that. And Miss McGrail was the teacher in Cregganbaun National School at the time. And she wrote, on the Friday preceding the move, 15 of our pupils bade us goodbye and went to their homes in the tiny villages of Sherwee, Woodfield, Altor and Derry. On the following Sunday morning, they went with their parents or grandparents to Mass in Killeen Church, which is here beside us, and afterwards prayed by the graves of their kindred in the nearby cemetery to my right. On Wednesday, the sun was breaking through the clouds of Bohola. They turned the keys in their doors forever. They then took a long last look at the scenes that will live with them for the rest of their lives. It was a huge thing. Patrick Hine said, it's a big change, all right, but for the length of time I'll be in it, it won't make much difference. It's the young ones I'm thinking of. It's a great thing to happen to them. It was a hard and, as you can imagine, lonely time to leave the old place. And only for the children, they said, we'd never have come. If we had farms like this in our own, we would be well off. But what am I to do with the 4 or 5 acres or rocks? I think a very sad thing was that every single man, woman and child getting on that bus that spring morning were heartbroken. And when the bus was passing through Louisburgh, the people wanted the bus to stop so that they could get off and say goodbye to their friends there. The bus wouldn't stop. The townspeople were all out to wave goodbye. And I suppose the story, the background there is that if the bus stopped and they got off,
I said about my mother's recollection of their move from Tyrone, Bohola, County Mayo, to Killeen, Castlepollard, County Westmeath. In April 1955, my parents, Gerald and Sarah McNicholas, along with Gerald's mother, Mary, migrated from Tyrone, Bohola, County Mayo, to Killeen, Castlepollard, County Westmeath. Along with them, 4 other families migrated to other parts of Westmeath, and those families were related to my father. So two of the families relocated to Turin near Mullingar, a place called Jefferstown, and 2 other families migrated to Loughnane Valley near Castlepollard. the migration, the 5 families would have applied to the Land Commission to relocate based on the size of their farms and the poor quality of the land they farmed. It was land in East Mayo that was prone to flooding in the winter. My father had 14 acres of fairly mixed poor land, and they lived in a thatched house, which was typical of the houses down at the time. Thatched houses were high maintenance as they had to be freshly thatched on a regular basis. On the day of the departure from Tyrone, all 5 families hired a bus and some trucks to transport everything, including livestock and fowl, to their new homes. All their neighbours came out to help at the time. And like what Mary was talking about, Willie Davitt, the neighbours bemoaned the fact that the cream of the village were leaving, never to return.
So I'm going to read the poem, The Homes They Left Behind by Michael Davitt. It was the year of 55, the Cregganbaun was on its knees. Several families for pastures now decided to up and leave. They were going across the Shannon, a better life to make, and leaving their neighbours and kith and kin. It was for their children's sake. The neighbours would gather every night and discuss why they must part. For some it was a new life, for others a saddened heart. They would talk and chat throughout the night of cows and sheep and hens, about politics and blood and even Dylan's hens. Tommy Needham as a neighbour was as good as they could come. Whenever help was needed, hesitation there was none. Across the bridge and up the line, John Wallace was the same. The O'Grady's, Kilcoynes and Corrigans were the finest you could name. Paddy Burke from Derry High, his reasons always sound. He had no doubt about his dream, for Westmeath he was bound. He loved his land, his hills, his neighbours one and all, but the future of his family was for him the greatest call. The mothers of the parish suffered the biggest blow. The friends they had known for life were now about to go. What had they left but sadness, they were left alone to cry. It was hard to see their loneliness as they said their last goodbye. The little children who went to school with pals they knew so well, how could they tell them, their little friends, they would not be back again? It was at the 23rd of March at the crossroads near the school. The lorries lined up side by side, their mission didn't fill. The neighbours came to say goodbye, their sadness plain to see. Friends they had known forever were now about to flee. But what was fame and fortune? How did you measure wealth? It is to be found in the playing fields or in peace or health. The families who made that difficult choice were pioneers of a kind, but their genes will forever in their homes be left behind.
Take a shot late to late 50s, came up in 1955 and that.
Wow.
As you can see, house, one bedroom, kitchen, the parlour that nobody ever used, and small children would have used it. The cow shed and the storeroom and the hen houses there at the back and that. Now, I always say that if we knew the Zoom or whatever the thing was coming that day, we might have tidied it up a bit, or might have looked a bit better. But anyway, we did come up at that time. It was absolutely great to what we were coming to and that. Now, of course, there was no running water. We talked about how they accepted the new neighbours, and Needham described how the new neighbours were kind and most helpful. Each and every one had a great welcome for us, and that is so true. Next time, Maggie O'Grady, Maggie Donnelly, she was from Woodfield. She said it was lonely leaving our hearts in Mayo. There were hundreds of the boys to see us off. Our neighbours and friends in Cregganbaun were always so very good to us and kind. I was never outside Mayo in my life before. It was grand up here and the land is good, and there's a grand breeze of wind from the lake. Yes, we're lonely leaving, but we like it here now. So they did settle down so well that and on the next day, or a couple of days later, they were added to this school in Whitehall, and that. The school in Whitehall was struggling at the time, and here was these 10 families coming and that. And 4 years later, they built a new school in Whitehall and that. And again, now, the reason I put out that photograph, if you look at that photograph, then there's Burkes and there's Kilkeens and there's Corrigans and there's Grays and there's Neethams. And that's the two classes, the supernatural and the class as well. So the names are in the schools that came up on that. You can imagine the difference it made to the community when we came up with that. And the next photograph then is the one, Greytown, Greytown had won the championship in 1942 and in 1980. Well, first of all, Greytown were disbanded in the 50s because of immigration and that. And we played with Castlepollard when we were growing up and that. And playing with Castlepollard was someone I think from Louisburgh, playing with Westmeath. I'm sure they'd be playing with Louisburgh, so the Westmeath. So we played with Castlepollard and that. But as soon as we got enough of our own, we said, let's revive Greytown. In fact, 50 years this year we won the junior championship. And then in 1980 we won the senior championship after a lapse of 38 years. And on the team there's 4 Kilkeens, there's 3 Corrigans, 3 Burkes. 10 of the team were from Louisburgh.
Is this to bring the up to Mayo?
No, so we don't want to waste time on that. So hopefully Louisburgh gets enough some more for this course.
This is written by John Victory, but Anne Needham quoted a song, and it's a verse or a poem she thinks was composed by John Victory, which typified the Michael acceptance and support for the local community. Here it goes. You're welcome, dear brothers, to the County Mayo, to the land of your forefathers, some ages ago. It was here where the hellhounds of Cromwell held sway, and drove the mere Irish so far, far away. Their homes were ravished and right set at naught, while against mighty odds great battles were fought. Alas, Cromwell conquered a merciless foe, and your forebears took refuge in the County Mayo. Those dark evil days are now long past and gone. Through stories you have heard, in your hearts still linger on. We hope you live happy, each one in his home, where for hundreds of years the bullocks did roam. We know you feel lonely for leaving the West, where loved ones are sleeping in peace and at rest. Take heart and keep smiling while you plough and you sow, for the people all love you, the men of the West. Don't think that the people are heartless and cold. You are welcomed by all of us back to the fold. Join up in our pastimes, youth one and all, and you will soon feel at home in the famed Whitehall. The old may attend a market or fair, and make friends with the neighbours you are sure to meet there. Then happy you will feel as you go to and fro, and you won't be so sorry for leaving.
Was significant for the move as it provided the opportunity for planting, a turning point of the year when the cold weather conditions gave way to the sun, rain and warmth of the growing season. And so it was with these families too, a turning point, symbolic of uprooting, parting, replanting, beginning, growing, gathering, returning, remembering, renewing, a fresh start and a new way of life. In Westmeath, and we're absolutely delighted that the man who wrote the song will now sing it for us. From the Cregganbaun to Killeen. Here's Michael.
This song I wrote, I think it was in 1990. I was asked to write it by Teddy Crane of Weston for a reunion that was held in Louisburgh. And I thought I wouldn't, but anyway I wrote it, and I gave it to Teddy. Unfortunately, I didn't give it to him when the reunion was on. I gave it to him afterwards that night. And Teddy put it in his pocket and he said, never saw it again. maybe that wasn't benefit. But anyhow, this is the song anyway. I can think of it. It's many the flood has come and gone since that when remember day, when 9 young families of our 10 pulled roots and moved away. The wailing was as plaintive as when a baby leaves the womb, when our kind friends and neighbours left the Cregganbaun's for Killeen. The times were bad in '55, and luxuries were rare, and many a family of the time was driven near despair. But those of whom I sing tonight took their courage in their hands and left the homes they loved so dear for a challenging new land. By the Ravara's waters clear, those families made their homes. A strange and different landscape from the wild Atlantic shore. No Patrick's Reek, no Weir's Peak, no valleys great and grand, but verdant fields with fruitful years, where the planter once made stand. Those strange and different landscape didn't hinder their progress, and of every challenge that they met, they made a great success. At school and work, for brain and brawn, and on the hurling field, there were none their betters, and few their match in the county of Westmeath. But time like tide keeps rolling on, and nothing stays the same. The youth back then have now turned grey, the old have passed away. May God be good to those who gone. 'Twas they who worked the plough to smooth the road, to ease the load for those who harrow now.
Tonight, we greatly appreciate you coming here to hear the story. I just want to pay tribute to John for his tenacity and his interest in keeping the story alive and bringing it alive through the various, through the Westmeath chapter, through the presentation we did in Mullingar, and then for Mary O'Malley and Louisburgh-Killeen Heritage. It's indeed, I'd say, Mary, a privilege for us